before I wrap up the events, I'm going to touch on a number of current owners corporation matters, industry matters. And those matters are the effect of COVID-19, short stay accommodation, non-compliant cladding materials installed on buildings, the proposed changes to the Owners Corporations Act, and changes to swimming pool and spa regulations. Okay, so the first matter is the effect of COVID-19. I'm first going to talk about how COVID-19 has affected the night as a business, and then more specifically touch on the effects to owners corporations. So as we all know, back in the middle of March, we saw a huge surge in COVID-19 cases in Melbourne. And as a result, the night we moved very quickly as a business and arranged for the majority of our staff to work remotely from home by the third week of March. For us as an organisation, the number one priority was to ensure the health and wellbeing of our staff. And it also meant that we mitigated the risk of a number of staff members falling ill at the one time and not being able to provide a high level of service to our owners corporations. So pre-COVID, we've been a paperless workplace for many years, and therefore the transition to working remotely from home was a very seamless one. And staff were very quick to embrace the video conferencing software to interact with one another, but also to you as our clients. And on that note, it's very interesting to receive feedback from a number of clients regarding video conferencing and how efficient it has been running meetings, especially community meetings. And no doubt we'll see a lot of our clients continue on with that software when we return back to some sort of normality, hopefully very soon. One of the major challenges we faced as an organisation was the reduced personal interaction between our staff members. So as a result, we implemented a number of initiatives to combat this situation. And the first initiative being the introduction of daily huddle meetings for all our departments. So in fact, we're communicating more than we've ever done. Each team leader conducts a daily Zoom huddle for 5–10 minutes. It's an opportunity for staff to share work-related issues, but also non-work-related issues as well. So it may be that someone wants to talk about what they cooked last night for dinner, what they watched on TV, whether it's the news or that show about a farmer wanting a wife, I'm not quite sure. But also the ability to maybe showcase their latest isolation haircut, perhaps as well. Another initiative that we implemented is the increased interaction of increased interaction on our internal communication platform. So as an organisation, we use Microsoft Teams, and there's a number of different channels on the software. We have a social channel, and we've got a fantastic social committee that have really led the interaction between staff members, and that involves people posting a Friday quiz, something which may benefit them in terms of a question about a certain thing, or in fact today we actually had one of our staff members post a video of their new puppy, and that's certainly got a number of the staff excited. And finally, but this is not an exhaustive list in terms of initiatives, but one of the main initiatives that we've done is really encourage staff to utilise our Employee Assistance Program, the EAP, and that program is the ability for staff and their direct family members to reach out to a counsellor, perhaps, if they're experiencing a personal issue, whether it's just being over the fact that they're in isolation at home. And that's at no cost to our staff members. And that's an anonymous service that we provide. We don't actually know who's contacting that service, but we get the stats, and we do know that a number of staff have reached out to that. Not too many. We certainly encourage staff to speak to myself, Joyce, Scott, the senior management team before reaching out, but some staff feel a bit uncomfortable talking about their personal situations as well. Another challenge that we have faced is not knowing how COVID would affect our business operations and how owners' corporations would be affected as well. So back in March, we undertook a detailed analysis of potential risks that we as a business face, but also owners' corporations. The major outcome of that risk analysis is that we agreed that we wanted to provide unwavering support to owners' corporations in relation to navigating the COVID situation. So we made it our mission to understand the advice of government and experts in relation to what should be done, and then communicate that onto our clients. So we've issued a number of communications to Owners Corporation committees specifically, but also to all Owners Corporation members, owners in apartment buildings and townhouse estates as well. We've prepared notices and which can be printed and placed up throughout properties. They touch on social distancing. There's also a notice that talks about virtual register, and I'll get to that in a moment. But we've also provided ways an Owners Corporation can deal with lot owners potentially not paying their Owners Corporation fees on time. So the Accounts Department has spent a lot of time reviewing cash flow forecasts and working very closely with committees on that. So just a reminder, if you're not receiving communications at the moment, you can certainly sign up by going to our website or speaking to any staff member at the night, and we can sign you up to the newsletter. Unfortunately, there's been a number of properties that we manage that had confirmed cases of COVID. This has caused a lot of challenges for owners, corporations and occupiers alike. Obviously, a heightened stress of residents. So in terms of our approach dealing with that situation, we certainly endorse the recommendation of the peak industry body, Strata Community Association, in relation to dealing with a confirmed case. And that recommendation is that the authorities are notified when we become aware of a confirmed case, and hopefully they're notified already, but also to inform all building occupiers, visitors and contractors that someone at the property has a confirmed case of COVID. Also, we need to ensure that the identity of the person is not disclosed due to confidentiality reasons. We also suggest a deep clean of common areas where the person may have visited occurs, and that basically means getting a team of cleaners to thoroughly clean with steam guns and other chemicals as well. Owners corporations are now required to prepare a COVID-safe plan if there will be more than 5 contractors working on site at any one time. So there's 2 ways for an owners corporation to prepare a plan, and that is to either reach out to a specialised company to do so on their behalf, or perhaps get committee members or a selection of committee members, a subcommittee perhaps, to prepare the plan themselves. The Business Victoria website has a number of has a lot of information there to guide owners corporations in regard to developing a plan, and it in fact also has a template as well. So as mentioned, the Knights managers can assist owners corporations with the facilitation of preparing a plan. We're not experts in the field, so we can't do it ourselves, but we can certainly help by introducing you to specialised companies out there that can do so on your behalf. It is also important to note that an owners corporation has an obligation to ensure common property is safe for occupiers and contractors. So we recommend owners corporations consider some of the following measures in light of this whole COVID situation. And they are placing signage throughout a building, reminding occupiers and visitors of the ways to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, social distancing, washing your hands, wearing a mask, that type of thing. Increasing the frequency of cleaning of high traffic areas. So it may not be a deep clean, but just having the cleaner perhaps clean the lift buttons or the door handles to a property a bit more than what was done previously. A number of owners corporations have provided hand sanitizer stations in common areas. It's not mandatory, but certainly something to consider. And also to keep occupiers informed of any COVID cases, as mentioned earlier. In relation to the recent stage 4 restrictions, this has meant that only permitted works can be carried out at an owners corporation. And permitted works are deemed to be deemed essential to maintain health and safety of building occupants. So what works must stop for the time being include general gardening, lawn mowing, painting, non-essential preventative maintenance and repairs. And the type of works that can continue to happen include internal cleaning, the inspection and testing of fire safety systems, lift maintenance, waste management, and emergency repairs. So any worker attending an owner's corporation property must carry a permitted worker permit, which is issued by their employer or themselves if they're self-employed, and they must have an enacted COVID safe plan. So whilst an owner's corporation may have to implement a COVID safe plan themselves, every single service provider attending the property must also have one. And as touched on just before, we have created a virtual register for all visitors attending a property. So the obligation is that any visitor attending an owner's corporation must register their attendance. And at times it's very hard to have a physical paper document and get people to write their names. So what we've done is we've actually communicated to our contractors that they can register by going onto our website and clicking on a link and basically specifying the time, location that they attended a property. We've also produced a notice with a QR code that provides a link to the virtual register as well. Okay, and just a final note regarding COVID, that if an owner's corporation or owners identify people who are not abiding by the restrictions, then we encourage the person who witnesses the behaviour, or perhaps the building manager, contacts the police assistance line or lodges a report on the Victoria Police website. They are the ones who are responsible for enforcing the restrictions. Okay, moving on to short stay accommodation, so number 2 on the list of current matters. Just a brief update. So most people would be aware that an owner's corporation doesn't have the power to restrict apartments being used for short stay accommodation. Changes to the Owners Corporations Act were made and implemented as of the 1st of February 2019, last year, which basically provided owners corporations greater regulation in regard to short stay accommodation. However, a lot of people felt that they didn't go far enough. Something that the government did say at the time when they implemented the changes was that they were going to review how successful the changes were after 2 years. So that will be February next year. And I haven't heard anything regarding what's been done about that. But certainly when we do, we will notify our owners corporation clients. The current COVID situation has placed a halt to apartments being used for short stay accommodation in Metro Melbourne and Mitchell Shire. Back in July, the Department of Health and Human Services released a directive that stated a person who owns, controls, operates an accommodation facility in a restricted area must not operate the facility during the restricted activity period. And that includes apartments being used such as Airbnb and similar platforms. There are, however, a few exemptions to that rule. The requirement for emergency accommodation, someone who doesn't have a permanent residence in Victoria may be able to use an apartment for short stay, and someone who requires accommodation for work purposes. Okay, moving on to number 3 on the list is non-compliant cladding materials installed on buildings. So the installation of combustible cladding, such as aluminium composite panels and expanded polystyrene on buildings, is still a significant issue that we're dealing with. For all owners corporations, we recommend that a specialist, such as a building surveyor or a fire engineer, is engaged to conduct an audit to determine whether a non-compliant building material has been installed. In this current circumstance, that audit, whether that can be undertaken, there's a bit of grey area there, but we can certainly clarify that with those specialist providers. It is to be noted that despite a building that may be signed off by a building surveyor as compliance, the property may still in fact have non-compliant cladding installed. So certainly we suggest every owner's corporation investigates whether the cladding is compliant or not. In relation to obtaining funding from the government, a number of owners corporations managed by the Knight are currently liaising with the government's entity, Cladding Safety Victoria. Initially, Cladding Safety Victoria, CSV, had a short list of 15 properties. They've now expanded that list, and it is understood that there are now approximately 550 buildings at various stages of the assessment and rectification process. and it has been confirmed that cladding rectification works are deemed to be a permitted work by the Victorian government, so it can continue during stage 4. And I guess the audit, we just need to clarify whether that is permitted or not. Moving on to item 4 in regard to current matters, touching on proposed changes to the Owners Corporations Act 2006. So last year, an evening with the night, which was held at the RACV Club in the city, which was a fantastic evening. We had a number of presenters. One included Mark Lipschitz of CLP Lawyers, and he talked about the upcoming changes to the Owners Corporations Act. Unfortunately, those proposed changes are still proposed. They haven't come into effect yet because they haven't received parliamentary consent. The Owners Corporations and Other Acts Amendment Bill is currently at the second reading stage in the upper house of Victorian Parliament, which is the Legislative Council. And I've been closely following the progress, or lack of progress, I should say. It's been on the agenda, number 5 on the agenda for the orders of the day for many parliamentary sitting days, and unfortunately hasn't moved at all. So whilst the proposed changes were earmarked to come into effect as of the 1st of January next year, it may be that they are pushed back, unfortunately. But certainly, again, if there's any update regarding that timeline, we'll pass on to our clients in the e-newsletter communications. And just to confirm and advise that if you'd like a copy of the presentation from Mark Lipschitz of CLP Lawyers from last year, we can certainly provide that to anybody who requests a copy. And finally, just touching on swimming pool and spa regulations. So last year, Victorian building regulations changed to ensure the increase of child safety in and around pools and spas by requiring pool owners to comply with a new registration process, inspection, maintenance and compliance requirements. And an owners corporation that has a pool or spa in common property is deemed to be an owner. So just to let you know that those changes will come into effect as of the 1st of November this year. So every pool and spa must be registered with local council. We've gone through all our properties and formulated a list, and we're working closely with building managers and properties that don't have building managers. We're registering the pools with council ourselves. What it will also mean is that every 4 years, the barrier to the pool, whether that's a fence or the door that provides access to the pool facility, needs to be checked and certified by either a building surveyor or an inspector. So that's just going to increase the cost to an owners corporation. So they're the 5 matters that I've provided an update on. Just before I wrap up the event, just a few final housekeeping things. So just to remind everybody that it was recorded, and we will send out a recording to everybody. We've got a number of staff who have been very busy behind the scenes answering a number of questions, and I think in total there's been about just shy of 40 questions asked and answered. So we'll collate answers to those questions and provide a list to everybody so you can all see those responses. And apologies for any question that we didn't get around to answering, but certainly we'll look to answer that in the FAQ document. A survey will have opened in your browser. Hopefully it will open in your browser shortly, and we certainly welcome your feedback on tonight. In unusual circumstances, we hope you enjoyed the webinar format. Typically it would be held as a venue, and there'd be a few glasses of wine and nibbles as well. So unfortunately couldn't do that this evening. But just want to thank everybody for participating with us this evening, and wishing you all good health in this current circumstance, and hope that you can enjoy the night. Thank you.